Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this late autumnish, early winterish morning. Welcome to the IITPSA webinar. We are part of the special interest group for artificial intelligence and robotics, and I've got two amazing guests on the call this morning. To Tony and the team at the IITPSA, thank you once again for hosting this event. There you'll see on the right-hand side, there's a chat box area. So please post your comments and questions during the duration of our conversation. And then we will leave about 15 or so minutes toward the end to try and get to all of your questions. I'm just pasting it in the chat box now, a little bit of marketing. Our next AI and robotics event is on the 20th of May, where we're going to speak about chatbots and conversational artificial intelligence. And I've also posted the registration link there. So the topic of automation is our topic this morning. There's obviously a lot of hype, but then there are also some very real realities for organizations globally, but especially here in South Africa, to compete on a global stage. We have to become more efficient. We have to become faster in the way we are dealing with our clients. We have to become more efficient when it comes to our back office operations. And there's a lot of talk about automation and robotic automation. And these days, you'll hear a lot more talk about intelligent automation, which is where we bring in the likes of artificial intelligence and machine learning into the automation process. We start talking about autonomous automation. Later on, hopefully we'll get to what they call super automation. So it's very interesting. But what are the realities when it comes to a South Africa and an Africa context? Because inevitably, automation will lead to job losses and job displacements. In a country where we already have high unemployment numbers and in an economy that was hard hit by the COVID pandemic, what do? How do we make sure that we become better at servicing our clients, better at competing with our global competitors? But what do we do with our team members? How do we upskill them? How do we retain them? I think it's somewhat of a conundrum that a lot of organizations are dealing with. So this morning, I've got two very special ladies on the webinar with me. Firstly, I'd like to welcome Zanele, who is the head of the Automation Center of Excellence at Sanlam, and also Atenkosi Ngubevana, the Group Executive for Digital Reengineering at Vodacom. And she also looks after the intelligent automation capability at Vodacom. So two different industries, insurance and telco. Both of you ladies, good morning.
Good morning. Morning, Johan.
Ati, I hope I pronounced your surname correctly. I can hear you, Zanele. Okay. You never know. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. You both are doing amazing work in a very interesting time with very difficult things to deal with, as I said in the intro regarding automating and retaining our people. Maybe just to kick off with, and I'll start with you, Zanele, it's just a 1 or 2 minute intro. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about what you're doing at Sanlam, and then I'll go over to you, Ati, before I ask my first question.
Thank you, Johan, and it's great to be here. Hopefully, I'll be able to share some insights into our journey in Sanlam. So Sanlam started their automation journey by just touching on robotic process automation back in 2017, and I joined Sanlam to actually implement robotic process automation. And it was quite an interesting journey, very challenging, but quite exciting because everything was new. But the challenges were over the top because we did not have the right skills as well. But we've been on the journey for more than 3 years now, and we can see we are growing from strength to strength. So the automation COE currently is exploring more of the disruptive technologies. As you are all aware, we are faced with the fourth industrial revolution, and clients are looking for faster delivery. They are looking for more of a great experience when they interact with all their service providers. So we need to deliver faster and quality products at the end of the day. And sometimes we may not necessarily have the capability as human to move at the kind of rate they are looking for. And that is where intelligent automation comes in. So Sanlam is on a journey of their automation transformation journey, and we are looking at all disruptive technologies. We are exploring, we are trying things out, and there are things that we know they work already, and we are just wanting to add to that offering.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Zanele, thank you. Ati, on your side, just a short intro and the work you're doing.
Okay, my team started in 2018. So I've been in Vodacom for less than 3 years. We predominantly started off with a few contracting houses where we realized it wasn't going to work for us. We then decided to grow our own crop, for lack of a better description. It's been a challenging journey in terms of upskilling and trying to get the right kind of resources permanently employed. And that to me was very, very important. And I mean, I think close to 3 years later, we've now evolved not only to implementing RPA, but we've seen a convergence of the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning to actually increase our level of automation. And I then now started off in South Africa, but we are now also in Lesotho, the DRC, Tanzania, and Mozambique, where I've upskilled and set up 4 different squads to start what we started here in South Africa. They're moving at a relatively fast pace because they're learning from our learnings in South Africa. So it's been an interesting 2.5 years for me in Vodacom.
I'm sure you both have scars on your back, and I'd be interested to hear more about that. And as I said when we spoke yesterday, obviously I don't want you to share information you can't share, company confidential and the like. But the first question I have for you, and even if you just ask it generally, if you can't answer it specifically, when we get the mandate from the top to automate, do you think that mandate is realistic? Because I think sometimes business leaders think that this is a silver bullet. It's going to be easy to automate. I think often the intent is FTE or staff reduction. So we need to save costs, so let's just automate. And then the people like you have to do it, sit with these expectations. And I would think, and from others I'm speaking to, it's that pushback and almost educating your bosses about what this RPA and intelligent automation thing is, which is the biggest challenge. So, Zanele, I want to start with you, and whether it's Sanlam specific or just in general, do you think that the mandate is often unrealistic, or is that maybe not your experience?
So from my experience, when we started on our journey, I think the mandate was quite clear. It was saying, let's explore this technology. Let's see if this is something we can use in our business and bring more efficiencies and see if we can save costs by putting this in. So at that time, I don't think there were unrealistic expectations because we didn't know what we didn't know. So it was an exploratory exercise to actually see if we can use robotics, because we started with robotics. What I think helped us is that we partnered with one of our strategic partners to implement RPA, and they came with experience. What threw us off a bit was the fact that in our environment, we were not implementing something that is meant to be simple and quick to put in end, because we have quite a complex environment, infrastructure-wise, and the fact that it's a shared environment with other projects and other operational requirements. So what we found is that we found things out as we were trying to try this thing out, and there were blockers left, right, and center, and which then kind of threw us a curveball in terms of the timeline, because that was the only thing that I felt was a bit unrealistic, was the expectation that this should be delivered within this time, and the expectation is that we should make the saving come rain or shine, this is the saving we are anticipating to make. That's a cost saving, and then we should be able to deliver it within this time frame. And it was not to be. It was totally different from what was expected and what was put on the business case. So I think that was based on the fact that there was a lot of unknowns, and we did not, as an organization, fully understand the technology at the time. So I think the expectation was like, let's do a pilot project. Let's try it out. Let's see. And as we were going ahead, and then we realized that it is not as simple as people present it out to be out there. So it's kind of a yes and a no in terms of an answer. It's a yes and a no, just in terms of the timeline and the expectation of the value that it would bring, that it turned out not to be.
Okay. Interesting. And I think a lot of organizations is in that space. Ati, your answer on that?
I mean, Johan, I started RPA. I think it was one of the first companies in South Africa to implement RPA. It was in the banking space. And then I moved on to mining, a shared service, global shared services mining, and now I'm in telco. And I can comfortably say that the perceived expectations were unrealistic. In that, and I came to Vodacom, and my team, it took apparently a long time to get a person of my caliber to join Vodacom. So they ended up starting the team, and therefore the RPA narrative was already set. And when I say narrative, it's the general industry narrative that fast turnaround times, a quick return on investment, and it's light touch, no need for strong technical skills. And I can comfortably say in all three companies, the expectations were preset. Either the executives did their own reading, they were approached by different consulting houses and even the vendors purporting to offer these kind of opportunities. And some of them even had done proof of concepts. So now the problem with the proof of concept is just proving a concept, right? It's not necessarily a proof of value. And so I then came in on the back foot of people already having expectations, and that I need to hit the ground running with these preconceived ideas that I didn't set, right? And that is, I think in all three companies, I experienced the same thing. And so I think it took some time. I mean, we lived in 3 years, so it's not really time, but for me, it feels like a long time in terms of getting the executives to unlearn the expectations that they had from my team. And I think that to me has been the interesting journey that I've experienced, the unlearning and teaching people what this thing can and what it can't do and what it shouldn't do. It is what also is something that I found interesting even up until now.
You both say very much the same thing, and that I see in the market as well. I know that Sanlam and Vodacom, you're on two different RPA and automation platforms. I mean, there are some amazing platform vendors out there. What I want to ask you next is, what is the model between a vendor partner helping you to get going and for you and your team to then take it over? In other words, is it a hybrid model where you get a vendor in or vendors in to help you get going very quickly and upskill your teams, or do you think it's better to just maybe get the platform licenses from one of the platform vendors and do it yourself? Maybe just in general, and Ati, I'm going to start with you this time, experience in general regarding vendors when it comes to automation. So that could be platforms, it could be the implementation and so forth.
So I think a hybrid approach works best, right? And having experienced in the two other companies, with the vendors implementing and the people in the organization not aware of the complexities truly linked to implementing the solution, which is why when I joined Vodacom, I was very selfish in the approach, in that it was vendor partner led, but with a strong upskilling agenda. Because when you look at the people in the center of excellence now, I think easily 80% 80-90% is permanent employees and 10% is vendor, right? Because we do know that we don't know everything. And the value of a vendor is to come with a different lens that doesn't come with the native skills that are within the organization. So I don't think anybody should actually do it in isolation. And vendors are exposed to other types of complexities in other different businesses and other industries that they can come with that advice. But I would advocate for a company to own the journey. It isn't going to be easy at the beginning, but we are now yielding dividends in that. I think the last time I counted, we've got more than 100 people in our center of excellence across the organization. So that in itself is a very good story to tell, considering that we are yielding benefits in terms of financial benefits, and we also have people that have been upskilled or hired to be permanent employees to make sure that there's longevity and sustainability in the solution. Because we've seen vendors implement something with plasters and nobody really knowing what's under the hood. And when they move away, things get broken and it becomes a mess. So I would advocate for a hybrid approach that leans more towards having permanent staff members and a supplement of vendor skill set.
Okay, interesting. Zanele, your answer on that vendor mix?
So we took the approach of partnering with a strategic partner of Sanlam, and indeed they brought the technical skills, but with an intent to ensure that we build our own capacity and capability. So we took young, bright people to join Sanlam as part of an internship program, where they were sent over to India to get training on the platform, and they came back and did some about, I think, a year or 18 months with Sanlam, being trained within the environment. So our focus is to ensure that we definitely have our own capability, because we don't want to have a complete reliance on the vendor. But we continue to partner with the vendor because we are scaling the solution right now. We are doing other things as well. But the key thing is to ensure that we have our own capability, and we do. And we are hiring more people who are going to be Sanlam permanent employees. So I think Ati is right when she says it's important to make sure that you have your own team as well, but not necessarily throwing away everything with regards to the vendor, because indeed they bring a unique view because they've touched on different industries, not only your own industry. So they do definitely come with those expertise, but you want to ensure that your own team is strong enough. And I know that Sanlam also has an academy that has been started more on the BI side, but we are wanting to partake in that and ensure that the offering includes RPA and other technologies as well.
Okay. Next, I would like to ask you a general question about the South African market. The sense I have is that there are not many organizations who have successfully implemented RPA. I think there are a lot of organizations kind of dabbling with it, but in speaking with my clients, it also seems that a lot of them have had very bad experiences. Now, there are a number of reasons. It could be the hype, could be what the vendors promised, or the mandate, unrealistic mandate that they've had. And it almost seems that a lot of organizations are now reluctant to continue on this journey again, because they've paid a heck of a lot of money for the platforms and the bots and the licenses. They haven't seen the return, and it seems to like there's a general reluctance, but that's my perception. Zanele, what do you think is from people you're speaking with in the market?
So I think a lot of people, when we start on the journey, indeed, one of the things is that it's sold as something quick to put in, something simple to do, something, like it's truly a quick fix. It is definitely not a quick fix. My advice when I look back on my own journey is we thought, so Sanlam did a POC, and this POC was done before my time. And then as we started the pilot, the thinking was that let's rather use the same process that we piloted with, because we've already kind of learned some lessons, and maybe it would be quicker for us to do this. It didn't turn out to be like that. So we went a completely opposite direction in terms of RPA and how we implemented. We went with a process that was quite complex, like heavily complex, more than 500 steps that the board had to execute, and way more than 100 or 150 validations required. So it turned out to be a monster. And we've continued to implement a lot of monsters in my environment. But when I look back, I think to myself, we should have started with the simplest thing, the simplest we could take in. That would have given us quicker delivery, and that would then potentially yield far quicker ROI. But we didn't, and we struggled. But when I look back, as much as I'm thinking to myself, when we were having sessions with different consulting houses just for lessons learned and sharing experiences, we realized everyone was like, no, you can't implement a process like that. It's like an elephant. You have to cut it up into bite-sized chunks to be able to eat it whole. But we've managed to actually eat the entire elephant whole. And I'm proud of that, but that came with pain. It really came with pain in the process, because then we took longer to deliver, and we experienced a lot of frustrations and hurdles and so many things that I think maybe we could have avoided. So I do think companies out there should rather try and take in something as simple as possible that would kind of show the value to the rest of the organization, that would kind of show excitement and show interest. Because if you are able to do that, then there's more buy-in and there's more willingness from people to see that this thing actually works and it actually can bring value. Whereas when you're going through the difficulty of the challenges that you go through because you're trying to put in something complex and you're thrown with curveballs left, right, and center, then people look at it and think, this doesn't work. It's just a waste of money. It's just a waste of time. So my advice would be to soldier on, because I do feel like we've actually soldiered on and now we are actually seeing the results. And I must say the pandemic has kind of helped in a sense, because Sanlam was able to continue offering a service because we have bots running in that environment. When everyone was trying to say, how do we continue operating? How do we get our people ready to work from home when we were in lockdown and we were not worried, because we had an environment where it was fully operating with robots, and robots were able to offer the service to the client. So there is huge value in the technologies. So all I'm trying to say is that soldier on, but try and start simple and start small. That will kind of yield quicker results for you.
A lot of wisdom there, learned through pain. Ati, on your side, the sentiment in the market, what do you think?
I think the reason why we've got such a high level of failure, inverted commas, is a lot of organizations, if you ask them why do they want to implement robotics, process automation, or automation, predominantly a lot of them will tell you about headcount reduction and operational expenditure reduction. So I think that's one of the biggest flaws, right? In that it can't just be just for that, because then that's a zero-sum game. No organization is in the business of having less people. Insurance houses are there to service customers, sell insurance products. Vodacom is there to service customers while providing the best network in the country. Banking, so each industry has a reason why they exist. And so what I've seen is a reason why we are succeeding is that we're tapping into why we exist and how our department can be an enabler. Even my team's tagline is the ultimate enabler. Okay, fine, it's a bit ambitious, but hey, we the way that we work with business is we try and understand what are their pain points. And the question that we generally ask is, if you had unlimited hands, right, And now in the intelligent automation spaces, if you had unlimited brain capacity, what would you do, right? And how do you measure success? And that's where the management of expectation comes in that if in a particular executive, they have a KPI to do X, Y, Z, and they only have X amount of people to do this piece of work, we are then there to help that organization perform better. It's got nothing to do with FTE. If it does result in people being redundant, then that becomes a whole change management and HR conversation. But the target in of itself is not FTE. The target is to help that particular department and that strategy to be unlocked using intelligent automation. And I think that's where a lot of companies are not seeing that link, that we're not automating for the sake of automating. We're automating to make the organization more profitable or more sustainable. And that to me is one of the biggest hurdles. And then there's a culture also that is linked to the success of the initiative. And that if people don't think digital first type of mentality and culture, then we're going to struggle. Because I remember in one organization, I was told, but it's not broken, right? And yet there was one person who did this particular activity, and this one person was once in hospital, and they actually asked her to log into her computer to do a very, very important function in the organization, but there was only one. And I'm sure everybody on the line knows that we have those key man dependencies, that the certain things that just shouldn't be done by people, right? And so if the culture is not think digital first, then, and it's also not open to the concept of automation, because some people will hold on to their jobs, right? Because they've got nothing else to work towards. So if the organization doesn't know where they want to go, right? I always give the narrative that people hold on to what they know. And us coming in as people that want to automate, you're almost telling them to let go of something, and then they don't have anything else to reach for. So that whole culture and change management can also be a big hindrance that prevents organizations from actually scaling. And I've seen that happening. So that's why there's a lot of organizations that are unable to unlock and scale because of those two, the reason why they're automating and a culture and change management perspective that's lacking is I think what I've seen to be the reason why in South Africa generally, we're not getting the growth and scale that was anticipated.
Yeah, you're both so right. I think because we're going to get, and Corné asked this question, I'm going to get to it a little later, where does the ownership of this initiative sit? But I think it's often a tech-driven, platform-driven, somebody went to a conference and they came back with a good idea kind of a thing, where it's not a people-first initiative, and where, like you say, because we've got this amazing platform, but what about change? What about upskilling? What about all these other maybe non-technical things? But before I get to that, the next thing I want to ask you, some of us might be lucky that we have green fields. In other words, you're either in an organization or you're recruited to start from scratch when it comes to smart automation. But both of you alluded to the fact that this happened to you. You got the role after they've already tried it. So obviously you entering this quagmire of whether it's disappointments or perceptions, etc. If you have to do it all over again, or if you have to do it at a new company, given the lessons you've learned, what are the key things you would do? So there might be people on the webinar today who are in a job like that or are looking for a job like that. So I started a new company. I'm head of automation. Zanele, what are the key things you wish you could do over or you would do in the next job regarding automation?
I think the one critical thing that I had to overcome was ensuring that all stakeholders are engaged and they fully understand what the technology is capable of and what the technology is going to do for the organization and where the value lies. Because I think that was the missing link. It was initially just sold as something that can be quickly done. IT is not required. And as a result, IT was kind of left behind. And it was quite a journey to rebuild those relationships and ensure that you get the kind of support you require. So I would definitely ensure that all key stakeholders are involved upfront, and they fully understand their role, and they are allowed to participate and express their own concerns, and have a more solution-minded type of attitude. So that is the one critical thing that I think slowed us down a bit, was to try and still and say, can we please get your help here? Can you? And then people kept on saying, but we were told that we're not required. So that's the one thing. One other thing is to ensure that we are clear on the security requirements. Security was the one area that threw a huge curveball, because you must remember, this is new technology. And as the person who's selling it, I'm not fully clear as well how this security of this technology, or how will it behave. So there's fears. How do you just throw in a robot in there? Don't be worried that it may be manipulated. You know what I mean? So there's security related challenges that you need to address upfront, because you don't want to discover that. Can you imagine discovering all these challenges when you are wanting to go live, and then security saying, no, you can't do that? So I would have indeed made sure that we engage with security upfront as well, and their involvement is upfront, and they're clear on what this technology is going to do, and make sure that those risks are clearly defined, and we know exactly how we are going to mitigate them. And probably, thirdly, I would look at the skill set, because I think that challenged us big time, as much as we had a vendor partner. So I think because of our environment being as complex as it was, we needed far more skills than we thought we needed, and we did not realize that. So it is important to ensure, and I'm thinking to myself, at this point in time in the automation journey, there's people now who've got the experience, who've actually done this several times. So I think companies would be in a better position now to get the right skill set. But at the time we started, those were far and in between. So we truly struggled with the skill set. So it's important to have the right skills, and ensure that you partner with the right partner, and they bring thought leadership, because that is critical. You need a partner that will bring thought leadership into the process, because if you are starting from scratch, you don't know what you don't know, and you need that person who's going to guide you, or even if they are not telling you what to do, but to guide your thinking, to say, here's an issue, you can look at it this way, you can look at it this way, and then see how you apply it in your own context and environment. So those are the three things that I think I could bring at this stage. There's far more, but I would like to give Ati an opportunity to throw in some way as well.
Yeah, Zanele, I'm thinking, what are you doing to me now? Because now I have to add on, and I don't want to repeat what you're saying, right? So I think, and this is something I had to do while I was in Vodacom already. So I don't want people to think that I came in and that the land was already prepped for me. One of the best things that anybody who's starting on this journey needs to do is to get the right executive buy-in, right? And an alignment within those executives. And I think I do acknowledge that in Vodacom, I am blessed to have support all the way from Shamil, right? Who's our group CEO. Just now in December, I had a one-on-one coffee with Shamil where I was giving him an update, on where since I started, where I am, where does he think I should focus my energies on, where I think we went wrong. And I acknowledged where we didn't go wrong, or we didn't go right. And he was very clear on, you know what, the company is going in this direction. Think about focusing here and doing this. Talk to this person. And my mandate after that December conversation was invigorated, right? So that buy-in for me was so important. Then from an HR perspective, again, our group chief HR is like one of my best buddies, right? From a change management perspective, from also managing his expectations and what he should expect from me and the anticipated outcome from a people perspective. I mean, that's still a journey, but there's a lot of alignment that was needed there. And then also what we then did during our journey is to I was almost allowed to slow down, right? Reflect on why we exist. So whether you are already in the journey or whether you are starting a new department or you're joining a new company, understand why you exist and what value you're planning on bringing to the organization. Or otherwise, you're going to be busy being busy. And believe me, we went through that exercise of being busy, where people were logging, because vendors say promote staff members logging ideas, right? So we're like here taking different ideas and implementing. We stayed in proof of concept mode for easily 12 months without us realizing that Vodacom is wide and also deep, right? So we were all over, but we were being busy with no impact. Up until I remember I used to report to the group CFO, where I said to him, I'm actually tired. Like, and not to say I'm not working, but I'm tired of not having impact. And then we adjusted our ways of working, where instead of being breadth across the organization, we wanted to go deeper in departments. That's a strategy we chose, that instead of having people logging ideas is always good because we don't know what we don't know. But when I see the person logging an idea as an introduction to that department, for us to assess everything in that department, from what are people doing, where does the department want to go, why do they want to do that, and then from there we have a department strategy on we are going to automate as much as we can in that department. Then that way we have depth and transformation. I mean, I was just saying to you, Johan, just the other day, how it gives me so much pride when I have the chief risk officer saying to me, oh, Ati, I'm so happy whenever you're in a meeting because I know I'm going to hear what the robots are doing. Like, Zanele, to your point of risk, the chief risk officer gets excited when he sees me, which is something that I know a lot of people don't experience. So that stakeholder buy-in, change management, and know why you exist from a strategy perspective is so important, because then that way, if they want to reflect on what is happening in this team, they can look around in their team and see how their team has transformed because of RPA. And then the support from a technology perspective. I've got a very good relationship with my technology implementation partner. It wasn't always perfect. That's something that if we could redo well, it's that support and IT support function. And I hate the fact that a lot of vendors keep on selling this thing as a non-technical solution. It is a complex technology implementation that should not be taken lightly. Our monitoring team is a fully functional monitoring 24-hour 376 monitoring function. Still not perfect. I mean, we just got audited now. Fine, we had audit findings, but we were the top 5 performing COEs in Vodafone, right? So we're doing something right with my technology partner, but it just didn't wake up and it was there. That technology function is so important and shouldn't. It's not a technology implementation. So I lead what needs to happen from a strategy perspective, but they're there to support me. And I have got high expectations of them. And that's why they've been able to step up monitoring. They keep up to date with every technology and updates that are happening to support my strategy. So yeah, I think I listed 4 things. Yeah, but those for me are so, and those are things that got adjusted in the journey. So if anybody's already in the journey and feels defeated, there are things that can be done. It's a digital transformation. It's not a switch that, you know, and then everything is perfect. So you are also allowed to change and transform as a department. I think it's actually allowed for you to change your mind and go in another direction, as long as you know where you're going.
So much wisdom from so much school fees paid over the years. Next, I want to come to a very important question for me, and that's alluding to the question Corne asked on the chat, is about the where does the ownership sit and what is the target operating model? Now, in some of the RPA books I've read, there are up to 12 different potential operating models, variants of hybrids, etc. So, for instance, I work with some clients who the ownership sits completely within tech, and it's almost dictated from there. Others where it sits with business and they are being supported. One of my banking clients have decided that they are essentially going to give the freedom to their three big pillars, so retail, CIB, and Africa, to kind of do their own thing, decide their own platform, work with their own vendors. And I think all of them have challenges, and most likely all of them are more relevant to different industries. So I think, Zanele, being a COE head, what are the best operating models? So is it good if it's just IT? Is it good if it's just business, or is it a hybrid? What do you think works best?
So just to put it out there, we are still trying to figure it out. But what we've done, we had a function in our space which is called business change, which is where we currently reside, is within business change and transformation. So that is a link between business and IT in a sense. So that is where we are residing right now. And we've put our COE as a central place for the organization, but with the intention to say, as we scale, we could potentially enable different business areas or different Sanlam clusters to have their own COEs. But because we are still new in the journey and we've only established the COE in 2019, let's put things in place and make sure that we are that central governance structure for the rest of the organization. But as we evolve and as we grow, that could change. So at this point in time, we are still residing within business change and transformation, which is kind of a link between business and so we run initiatives that are enabling business strategy. So that is where our COE currently resides. And I think this question would be dependent on each organization and which approach they are taking for their automation. So some may decide that we want to start very small and will only focus on one department, and maybe let's just do it here. Some will decide, let's start big, let's put it at a group level. So I think it may potentially be a decision for each organization, but this is how we have done it in our own environment.
IT centralized or not, or both? Hybrid?
I'll tell you what we're doing in Vodacom. And I think it's one of my 2020 best moments type of feel good, in that we were centralized in 2019, where people logged ideas and that whole long POC mode. And then in 2020, we rearranged our team. Still me as the head of the Center of Excellence, together with my technology partner. But what we've done is, anybody, if you've got the time, you go onto the Vodacom website. When you go to About Us and the leadership, we've got what we call chief officers, right? So I now have a squad for every chief. So I took my team that I had, and then I rearranged them into smaller squads. And then I've got Scrum Masters that toggle, so it's a shared resource. Developers are dedicated, BAs are dedicated to the squad. Then now each squad is focusing. So I've got a squad for every chief. Each squad is trying to serve each chief, right? So we've got a squad that looks after Vodacom business, and we're automating initiatives there. And finance, and we've got a consumer business unit, we've got customer operations, and we've got technology, and then we've got IT, we've got legal and regulatory. What that has allowed us to do, we then work with business to try and understand how do we use automation to help you. So we then position ourselves as this team that is there to help that department perform better. So do you see the psychology there is that we are helping them help themselves through intelligent automation, right? So I then have a sub-strategy for each of the squads, because legal and regulatory, which is where the fraud and forensics team sits, we want to help them. They're using RPA and machine learning to help identify fraud cases and eliminate the noise, that the people get to investigate their true fraud cases faster. Whereas the consumer business unit wants to sell more products, right? So how do we enable them to sell more products? And then finance, we're playing in the intelligent finance space, where we're using machine learning and RPA to predict maybe certain attributes of our customers that will help us become more profitable. And so each one of those squads have got their own sub-strategies. But in terms of the departments that we fall under, my manager looks after AI, machine learning, and RPA. So whoever was a very bright spark in Vodacom, who created that department, almost could see what was coming in the future. Because right now, at any given time, my peers are lead data scientists, right? So wherever RPA has a limitation, I've got easy access to somebody who is a data scientist to potentially converge machine learning, AI, and RPA. And then my technology partner implements the initiatives that we've identified in the squads. So in the squads also, he's then allocated developers, right? So that means, one of the biggest hurdles in RPA is access to systems, right? So if we have a squad that looks after one chief, we've got a set of systems that that chief operates in. So it means from an access perspective, that hurdle of having to apply for access, and the system owners now already know us. Business owners know us. So we now are part of the ecosystem of that department, and access is no longer that big of a hurdle. So that's where we're sitting. We've got a business function that looks at what we should do. We've got a technology partner, but we've then segregated these teams into these clusters or into these squads. And that's how, so technically speaking, they all belong to the Center of Excellence, but their focus is split across, and we use one platform. And so even from a strategy perspective, I then consolidate. We then have a group strategy that's fed by the multiple squads that are there. And then from a reporting perspective, it's then easy to monitor and evaluate the performance of my department and the technology, because it is centralized, but with the hybrid implementation across the different squads.
Okay. Wow.
Sorry, Johan.
There's a lot of wisdom in there. Go on, please.
I'm going to have to get closer to Artie, because that is exactly what I'm trying to do, is to make sure that the squads that are servicing each different department as we scale now. So I will get close to you just to get some learnings and how to make that work.
Okay, cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
we've got 10 minutes left.
Okay.
Sorry, Artie.
What I'm saying, we can carry on.
Oh, okay, we've got a bit of a delay. Sorry. I quickly want to get to some questions before we have to end off. The first one, Zanele, and there's a question by Unati about AI and RPA in the public sector and the potential opportunities. And, if I think of something like the vaccine rollout, RPA and intelligent automation would be fantastic there to just automate this, if you think of this end-to-end process of getting the vaccines to people. But just any views on the potential for AI and RPA in public sector, and what's your experience, what's happening there? Are they far behind? Are things happening? Or do you not know? Because I don't know if anyone really knows.
So I have not necessarily looked at what is happening in the public sector, but just from my previous experience of the public sector, I think there's huge opportunities in the public sector. The challenges there would be when it comes to decision making and making sure things move, because things tend to move quite slow. And I think for them to automate, it would enable a lot of their processes to move faster, to provide better service to society. And I do see lots and lots of opportunities. But we need to make sure that we get their buy-in, as we know how public sector works currently. And I'm sure a lot of people tend not to be happy about it. But I do think we have a very good example of an efficient working environment, which is SARS. When you look at how they get their tax collected, and I think they do have a very efficient working system in that space. So we could target operations like those or departments like those, which could lead in terms of the required change to introduce automation in the public sector. But I see lots and lots of opportunities there, without a doubt.
Okay, super. There's a lot of questions. Our time is limited. I want to actually see if I can combine a few of them, and I'll look at you for this one, Ati. Konai again is asking, of your FTEs, how many are dealing with maintenance of the bots and how many are dealing with development? And then just combined with that, to what extent are the COE making use of BPM process re-engineering? So bot creation and maintenance, and then the BPM aspect of
Okay,
that.
cool. So monitoring team, I think there's about 12, 15 who do first line support and monitoring. And then from a development perspective, I think we've got about 25 to 27. Not too bad. 25, 27, somewhere there. But those guys also do continuous improvement. So the certain items that seem to, when we're doing our monitoring and evaluation, we realize certain bots are not performing to the standard that we anticipate. Then the monitoring team, together with those developers, with the squads, will see the opportunities to enhance. So it's that toggling between 12, 15 to 25, 30, somewhere there. Then the name of my department is Digital Process Re-engineering, right? So this means that without process engineering or re-engineering, we would be failing ourselves. In that our approach is to analyze, simplify, and then automate. Eradicate, and then automate, right? And there's a lot of time that gets spent in process analysis. So we also, in the squad, we've got process engineers that look at processes from an end-to-end perspective. So remember how I had said that people log ideas. So when you look at a business process, it generally spans over 4 or 5 different departments, right? So you find that it's only the person in department number 3 that's logging the idea. But we need to then understand, where do they fit in the ecosystem? And remember how I said that the idea being logged is, for me, an indication of interest of automation. It's not to say we are only going to automate what got logged. That then gives us opportunities to look upstream in terms of what are the activities that feed into this department that logged the idea, and also to look downstream in terms of understanding what are then the manual processes and pain points and blockers, so that we map out the full value chain, and then we automate in the different sprints, depending on the complexity of the process. So the process engineer function in my team is, I hired the guys in last year in 2020. So they weren't always there, but I always knew that we needed them. So eventually I managed to get the headcount to have them join the team. So the process engineer function is so important in this space. I can't overemphasize it.
Okay. We've got 4 minutes. Ati, I want to ask you to answer this question in 1 minute, which I know is going to be impossible because I know we've spoken about it. There's a very relevant question about OCR and RPA, so optical character recognition, documents that need to be scanned in and so forth. I know you guys are doing some things there, Zanele, you guys might too, but I've got one last question for you guys. But so 1 minute, OCR and RPA, Ati.
I think we're now getting it right in that the way that the OCR that we've got is intelligent OCR, where we've actually got a platform that uses multiple OCR engines. So the bot would fetch piece of information and it reads the information, and the strongest engine, right, produces the output. Because what I think I learned, and I've also gone through a whole OCR journey, even previous companies, different OCR vendors have got different strengths and weaknesses. But with the platform that we actually have 5, not 3, 5 engines where the model is that we pay per use, right? So it's not as if we've invested in one or and have to pay for all of them. As we read a document, and if we're choosing to use Abby because it was stronger in that document type, then we're paying per use for that engine, and therefore we're going to be seeing better benefits than us just only using one technology in terms of the OCR solution. But there's a lot of opportunities that exist there in that space.
Can I quickly touch on OCR? We have implemented an OCR technology that we found it works brilliantly. It gives us between 93 and 97% conversion accuracy, because what we found, one of the stumbling blocks that we had for our RPA journey was that majority of our documents still come in handwritten, and the bot is not going to be able to consume that information when it's handwritten. So we needed to convert it into digitized format. And we've partnered with a US company, and it has given us brilliant results. And so what we do now, we make sure that all those documents that come through are converted via this platform, and then it can then be fed right straight through to the bot. So this enables us with straight through processing. So it works brilliantly.
Amazing. So we're going to end off soon. So now I've got another 30 seconds for each of you. It sounds like American Idol or something. Zanele, let me start with you. The future, if we have this conversation in 5 years regarding automation, intelligent automation, in 30 seconds, what do you think, where are we going? If you have a glass ball to read into.
If we have a glass ball, we have a brilliantly transformed environment. But I think for us to ensure that we have a brilliantly transformed environment that is digitally transformed, it needs to start at schools. We need to ensure that our children are better prepared and they are being taught for the skills of the future, because we have a lot coming our way and the technology is evolving at a speed of lightning. So we need to ensure that we are better prepared for it, and we train our children at schools already. I'll give an example. My children's schools offers robotics as a subject. It offers all these technology related types of subjects. So we need more of that, and we need to ensure that that is also offered in the public system. Then we will be far better prepared for the skills of the future, because we are definitely going to go wild when it comes to technology.
True. Thank you. Ati, look into the glass ball. What do you see?
I see a convergence of technologies where we should play in the human-centered intelligent automation space, where people are empowered to work alongside machine learning and AI with RPA. That the idea is to make them stronger people, and the technology does what technology is good at, and people engage more with people with the assistance of technology.
Okay, super. Well, we need to end it off, ladies, to both of you. Thank you. Some valuable insights. The recording will be available on YouTube in the next few days, and I will send that out as well. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for the very valuable lessons and advice that you've shared with all of us. Thank you for everyone for joining this webinar. Look out for our 20 May event, and I hope you all have a really good day. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you so
Bye,
much,
guys.
Johan, and thank you to everyone. Bye.
Bye.